Under the ruthless blaze of a July sun, the city of Washington pulsed with the rhythm of ambition and applause. Flags rippled like flames above the heads of a restless crowd, cameras flickered in every direction, and the metallic taste of heat and hope mingled in the air. It was one of those afternoons where history pretended to happen, not because anything truly changed, but because someone in a suit declared it would. At the heart of the spectacle stood Senator Jonathan Reed, his posture straight, his jaw square, his voice rolling out like a sermon across the plaza. The podium gleamed before him, polished so bright that it threw back the reflection of his perfectly knotted tie. "We will cleanse this city," he thundered, his words swelling against the echo of the crowd. "We will root out corruption, restore integrity, and make our streets safe again." The applause came like a wave. Men in suits clapped. Women raised their flags. A little boy on someone's shoulders cheered for a name he didn't understand. Reed smiled, that effortless, rehearsed smile, and lowered his hands just long enough for the television cameras to catch the conviction in his eyes. From the edges of the square, beyond the banners and the barriers, a small cart released the faint hiss of cooking oil. The scent of roasted corn and seasoned meat drifted through the humid air, a smell both defiant and forgotten amid the polished perfume of power. Maria Lopez wiped the sweat from her brow and turned a tortilla on the pan. Her hands moved with the kind of rhythm that came from muscle memory, not thought. She'd been standing there since dawn, same corner, same spot, same sunburned shoulders. The tourists who came for the rally loved her tacos, especially the spicy ones. But today, no one stopped. They were all looking at the man with the flag pin and the golden microphone. She didn't understand everything he said. English wasn't her first language, but certain words stung with painful clarity. "And end the chaos caused by illegal street vendors," her heart stuttered. She looked up, squinting past the glare. Was he talking about her? About people like her? Who worked 12 hours to make $50? Who cleaned their carts with borrowed soap and prayed they wouldn't be fined? Maria pressed her lips together. The oil on the pan sizzled like anger, sharp and immediate. Across the plaza, Reed gestured with open palms, the picture of righteous indignation. "No more corruption, no more disorder. Together, we will bring honor back to our nation's capital." The crowd erupted again, and Maria, standing among discarded napkins and the scent of cilantro, felt invisible. When the speech ended, Reed shook hands, kissed babies, posed for photos. His aides swarmed around him, sleek and efficient, all dark suits and brighter smiles. One of them, a man named James Carter, leaned close to whisper something in Reed's ear. Maria couldn't hear the words, but she saw Reed's jaw tighten briefly, just before his expression smoothed again into that familiar politician's calm. The crowd began to disperse. The journalists packed their microphones. Maria started cleaning her cart, her movements slow, deliberate. A folded picture, her husband in uniform, peeked out from the corner of the cart's frame. She touched it gently. He'd died overseas 5 years ago. Since then, she'd survived by cooking, by moving every time the police came too close, by never drawing attention. Today, she had failed at that last part. She was just about to push her cart away when she saw them. Carter and a man in a gray suit standing beside a black SUV. They were half hidden behind the podium, shielded from the departing crowd. Carter's back was turned, his hand extended casually as if greeting an old friend. But Maria noticed the envelope. Thick, white, the kind that didn't carry letters. The man in gray slipped it into Carter's palm. Carter nodded once and tucked it inside his jacket, quick, practiced, unbothered. Then he lit a cigarette, leaned against the SUV, and scrolled through his phone. Maria froze. Her instincts screamed at her to look away. People like her didn't get involved in things like this. They kept their heads down. They didn't accuse men in suits. but her husband's face stared at her from the photo on her cart. A memory of someone who'd believed in justice, who'd fought for it, who'd died for it. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone. One swipe, one press, and the red circle began to glow on the screen. Live. The lens captured Carter perfectly. His posture, the envelope, the cigarette smoke curling around his head like a halo of guilt. The comments began instantly. "What's going on? Wait, is that Reed's assistant? Holy shit, it is!" Maria's pulse pounded in her ears. She knew what would happen if someone noticed. They would take her cart, her money, maybe even her phone. But something in her chest, something raw and tired, whispered, "Not this time." Then Carter's head turned. His eyes met the camera. For one suspended heartbeat, neither moved. Then he stepped forward. Fast. "Hey!" he barked, his voice slicing through the distance. "Hey, lady! Stop filming!" Maria shoved the phone into her apron and bolted. The cart rattled behind her, spilling a trail of napkins and spilled salsa. She ran past the memorial steps, across the curb, into the blur of honking cars and shouting voices. Her breath came in sharp bursts. Behind her, Carter shouted something. She couldn't hear it over the pounding in her ears. The phone in her pocket buzzed. Notifications exploded across the screen. 10,000 watching, 25,000, 40,000. Someone had clipped the video and shared it. It was spreading. Fast. Maria ducked into a side street, pressing her back against a wall. Her heart drummed in her chest. She pulled out the phone. The live stream was still going. People were commenting in languages she didn't even recognize. Words like bribe, corruption, proof. She laughed softly, half in disbelief, half in terror. Then her knees gave out, and she slid down the wall, the phone still in her hand, the red "live" still glowing. A siren wailed in the distance, the screen reflected in her eyes like a burning star. And that's where the storm began. Not in a courtroom or a Senate hall, but in a forgotten alley, with a street vendor who'd had enough. The world was watching now. The city didn't know it yet, but by nightfall the name Maria Lopez would be everywhere. Her cart lay abandoned, wheels still turning slowly in the heat. A flag flapped overhead, half torn by the wind. Somewhere nearby, a camera crew hurried toward the chaos. And as Maria whispered a prayer to no one in particular, she didn't know she had just lit the fuse that would tear open the very world that had ignored her. The live stream pulsed brighter. Carter's face froze in a screenshot. A man caught mid-crime, mid-lie, mid-life unraveling. And the screen faded to black. The alley behind the Lincoln Memorial was never meant for witnesses. It smelled of oil, rust, and the faint rot of forgotten things. Cardboard boxes damp with last night's rain, cigarette butts, footprints leading nowhere. Maria pressed herself against the rough brick wall, her breathing ragged. Her palms stung from the fall, but she dared not move. The phone in her trembling hand kept vibrating, the red circle of the live stream still glowing in the corner of the cracked screen. Somewhere in the distance, the muffled echo of sirens rolled closer. She peeked around the corner. The plaza was emptying out. The flags, once proud and upright under the sun, now drooped with exhaustion. The podium gleamed in silence. And yet, beneath that calm, something was shifting. A quiet ripple spreading through screens, across cities, into homes. Her video, her shaky, accidental footage, was now a storm. Maria's mind spun. She didn't plan this. She hadn't meant to expose anyone. She'd only wanted to make rent, feed her son, survive another day without a fine. But the moment she saw that envelope slide into the assistant's pocket, something inside her refused to stay silent. She clutched the phone tighter. Comments flooded the live stream like a river breaking through a dam. "This is huge. That's James Carter, Reed's chief of staff. Who's filming this? Someone protect her." She swallowed hard. The name James Carter meant nothing to her, but the panic in his eyes when he'd spotted her, that she understood. That was the look of someone with everything to lose. Footsteps echoed. Two men in dark suits crossed the far end of the alley. She ducked low, hiding behind her toppled cart. Her tacos were ruined, salsa splattered on the pavement like blood. One of the men stopped, scanning the street. His voice was cold and clipped. "Find the woman, the one with the phone. She can't be far." Maria's heart stopped. She waited until the footsteps faded before crawling toward the next block. The street opened onto a busier avenue, filled with tourists and honking cars. For the first time in years, she was grateful for the noise. It swallowed her fear. She slipped into a small convenience store, crouched behind the magazine rack, and finally stopped the stream. The phone burned hot in her hands, the battery nearly dead. When she refreshed her notifications, she froze. Over 200,000 views, dozens of journalists tagging her name, her inbox exploding with messages, some begging for interviews, others offering money, and a few that simply said, "Run." The store clerk, a young man with earbuds, looked up briefly but didn't ask questions. Maria sank into the shadow between the soda fridge and the chip rack, her reflection faint in the glass door. Her eyes were red, her lips trembling. What have I done? Outside, the news was already spreading. Television screens in cafes replayed the grainy footage of Carter's hand slipping the envelope into his jacket. The networks ran it in loops, overlaid with bold captions. "Corruption scandal. Assistant to Senator Reid caught on video." Maria could hear snippets of conversation from passers-by. "You see that video? Crazy, huh?" "Probably fake. Deepfakes are everywhere now." "Nah, man, it's real. They're saying the woman was a food vendor or something." Food vendor, illegal immigrant, widow, mother. She could already imagine the words they'd use for her on television, the labels that stripped away her humanity and replaced it with something convenient. She glanced at her phone again. The battery icon blinked red. She needed to get home, to her son, Diego. Maria waited until the street seemed clear, then slipped out of the store and walked fast, keeping her head low. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every passing black car made her flinch. When she finally reached her small apartment on the edge of Columbia Heights, she collapsed against the door, chest heaving. The hallway smelled of bleach and loneliness. Inside, Diego was sitting on the couch, the TV casting pale light on his face. He was 12, too young to understand politics, but old enough to know when something was wrong. "Mom," he said, standing up. "Are you okay? Everyone online is talking about a video. They say it's you." Maria froze. The sound of her own name on national TV leaked from the screen. Maria Lopez, an undocumented vendor, appears to have captured what could be a major corruption scandal involving Senator Reid's inner circle. Her stomach dropped. The anchor's voice was polite, but beneath it lurked curiosity, the kind that cut deeper than any insult. "Turn it off," she whispered. "But Mom, turn it off!" Diego fumbled for the remote. The screen went black. The apartment fell into silence. Maria sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she murmured. "I just wanted to tell the truth." Diego sat beside her, his small hand on hers. "Then you did the right thing." She looked at him, his dark eyes, his father's eyes. Maybe he believed that. Maybe he still believed the world rewarded truth, but Maria had lived long enough to know better. Truth didn't save you. Truth cost you. A heavy knock rattled the door. 3 sharp bangs. Maria's heart leapt into her throat. She motioned for Diego to hide in the bedroom, then inched toward the door. A deep voice came through the wood. "Ms. Lopez, this is Detective Sanderson, Metropolitan Police. We need to ask you a few questions." Police. Her mind raced. She opened the door a crack. 2 officers stood there, one with kind eyes, the other with a notebook. "Are you Maria Lopez?" "Yes." "We saw the video. We need to make sure you're safe. There have been developments." Maria hesitated. "Am I in trouble?" The kinder officer shook his head. "No, ma'am, but you might want to stay off the streets for a few days. There's a lot of attention on this case. Some good, some not." She let them in. They asked her to describe what she saw, what time it happened, whether anyone else was there. She told them everything: the envelope, the SUV, the cigarette. They took notes quietly, occasionally glancing at each other. When they left, she locked the door and slumped against it. The night outside buzzed with helicopters and distant chatter. The whole city seemed to hum with her name. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. The phone kept buzzing, even after she turned it face down. She dreamt of her husband in uniform, standing at the edge of the Lincoln Memorial, looking down at her cart. When she reached for him, he vanished into the light. Morning came gray and heavy. The air smelled like rain. On the news, Senator Reid appeared in front of a sea of microphones. His voice, once confident, now wavered slightly. "We are aware of the allegations circulating online regarding one of my staff members. I want to make this clear. I have nothing to hide. We will cooperate fully with the authorities." Maria watched in silence. The man who had called people like her illegal chaos now looked smaller, cornered. Diego glanced at her. "Do you think he's scared?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, because for the first time someone saw him." By afternoon, reporters gathered outside her building. Cameras waited, vans lined the block. Maria stayed inside, shades drawn. Through the blinds, she could see the sea of microphones pointed at her window. Someone shouted her name. Another offered money for an exclusive. She felt like an animal trapped in a cage. Every time the phone buzzed, her chest tightened. Some messages were kind, people thanking her for exposing corruption. Others were filled with hate. "Go back to where you came from. Liar. You just want attention." She deleted them all, one by one, but the words still burned. That evening, she opened the window and let the rain wash in. The air was cool against her face. For a moment, she imagined her husband sitting beside her, his hand on hers, telling her to be brave. A knock came again, softer this time. When she opened the door, an older woman stood there, gray hair tucked under a rain hat. "Are you Maria Lopez?" Maria nodded cautiously. "I watched your video," the woman said. "My husband was a police officer. He used to say, 'The truth always costs, but it's still the cheapest thing worth buying.' You did good, mija." Maria felt her throat tighten. "Thank you." The woman smiled gently and left a small brown bag on the floor. Tacos, wrapped in foil with a note. "For you and your boy. Stay strong." Maria closed the door, tears stinging her eyes. She'd never felt so exposed, and yet, for the first time, not completely alone. As night deepened, thunder rolled in the distance. Maria turned off the lights and sat by the window, watching lightning split the sky over the Capitol dome. Somewhere, she knew, Reid was sitting in a marble office, watching the same storm, wondering if everything he'd built was about to crumble. Because now, the truth wasn't in his control. It was out there, living on millions of screens, impossible to erase. Maria leaned her head against the glass and whispered, "Let them see." The rain came harder, washing away the last bits of salsa from her cart in the alley below, carrying them down the gutter, into the veins of the city. And in that rain-soaked silence, something like resolve began to grow inside her. Quiet, stubborn, unbreakable. By morning, everything would change again. The police would come back. The reporters would shout louder. The senator's world would start to burn. and Maria Lopez, the invisible vendor, would have to decide whether to step forward or disappear forever. The rain did not stop for 2 days. It came down in silver sheets that blurred the skyline and soaked the marble steps of the city's monuments. Reporters in slick coats shouted over the downpour, cameras covered in plastic, chasing quotes that might win them a headline. The clip of the bribe, grainy, imperfect, undeniable, had now reached millions. Maria's name, her face, her voice were no longer hers. By the third morning, the news cycle had become a circus. Senator Reid's office released statements every few hours. One denied any knowledge of his aide's actions. Another promised an internal investigation. Then came the one that used words like forgery, foreign interference, digital manipulation. Each press release sounded more desperate than the last. Inside her small apartment, Maria watched it all unfold with a strange detachment, as though the woman on the screen were someone else entirely. She had stopped answering calls. The police had sent 2 officers to guard her building, but their presence only drew more attention. The reporters were relentless, shouting questions through the intercom, slipping letters under her door, calling her a hero 1 hour and a pawn the next. Diego tried to keep up with school online, but every classmate already knew. One afternoon he came home early, eyes red, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "They called you a liar," he whispered. "They said you made it up to get famous." Maria crouched down, holding his face between her hands. "People are afraid of the truth, mijo. They try to bury it. But once it's out, it never stays quiet." He nodded, though he didn't really understand. She could see it. The confusion, the shame of suddenly being visible when they had spent years trying not to be. That night, Maria sat by the window again, watching the city lights tremble through the rain. Her phone buzzed once more, a number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, but something in her gut told her to answer. "Ms. Lopez?" The voice was low, careful. "My name is Rebecca Shaw. I'm a journalist with the Washington Ledger. I think you have evidence that could bring down one of the most powerful men in this country, and I think you're in danger." Maria said nothing. She could hear traffic in the background, a siren passing. The woman continued. "They'll try to make you disappear, to discredit you, frighten you, anything. You need legal protection. There are people who can help." "I don't trust journalists," Maria said finally. "You all just want a story." "Maybe," Rebecca replied, "but sometimes stories save lives. Let me help you tell yours before they twist it into something else." The call ended with an address scribbled on a scrap of paper and a promise that sounded half like a threat. Maria stared at the words for a long time before folding it into her pocket. By dawn, she had made her choice. She packed a small bag, 2 sets of clothes, her husband's photo, Diego's school papers, and woke her son. "We're going to see a friend," she said. "It'll be safe." They slipped out through the back entrance, avoiding the news vans that had already gathered on the street. The city felt heavier that morning, gray and swollen with tension. Every step Maria took echoed in her chest. She didn't know if she was running towards safety or into the mouth of something larger. The cafe where Rebecca had told her to meet was quiet, tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. Inside, the smell of coffee was sharp and grounding. Rebecca sat at a corner table, her coat still damp, a notebook open before her. She was younger than Maria expected, with tired eyes that had seen too much. "You came," Rebecca said softly. "Good." Maria sat across from her. Diego clung to her sleeve, glancing around nervously. Rebecca pushed a small device across the table. "This is a secure recorder. I want to hear everything. From the moment you saw that envelope." Maria hesitated, but something about the journalist's calm steadiness made her exhale. She began to speak, the words coming haltingly at first, then faster, like a river breaking its dam. She told her about the rally, the speech, the envelope, the chase. About the phone that wouldn't stop buzzing, the police, the fear that never left. When she finished, Rebecca was silent for a long time. Then she said, "They'll go after you now, Maria. Reed's donors, his party, his allies. You've embarrassed too many people. But there are others, prosecutors, watchdog groups, who will see what you've done and fight for you. If you let me, I can make sure your story doesn't get buried." Maria looked down at her hands. "And if I don't?" "Then they'll write their own version of you." Outside, the rain eased into a mist. Cars passed, headlights glinting off the puddles. Rebecca glanced toward the window. "We should move. Someone might be watching." They left through the back door and crossed the alley. A figure stood by a car, umbrella tilted low. Maria froze. The man turned slightly, James Carter. His face was pale, drawn tight with sleeplessness. He took a step forward. "Maria," he called, voice shaking. "Please, you don't understand what you've done." Rebecca moved in front of her. "Stay back." Carter's hands trembled. "They're going to destroy both of us. You think Reed will let this go? He has people everywhere." Maria's pulse roared in her ears. "You took the money. You made the choice." He looked at her like a drowning man. "You don't know the half of it." Then he climbed into the car and drove away, leaving only the echo of tires against wet asphalt. Rebecca grabbed her arm. "We need to contact the FBI now, before he does." Hours later, they sat in a sterile office under flickering fluorescent lights. An agent named Wilson took her statement while another collected her phone for evidence. They assured her she'd done the right thing, that she was now part of a federal corruption probe. But Maria could see it in their faces, the caution, the doubt. She was still just a vendor to them, an inconvenient witness from the wrong side of the city. That night, back at a safe motel, Maria couldn't sleep. The hum of the air conditioner mixed with the sound of traffic. She turned on the small television. Reed was on the screen again, standing behind another podium, voice calm but brittle. "This so-called video is an attack on democracy," he said. "A smear orchestrated by those who wish to undermine our great nation." Maria switched it off. She felt the familiar sting of anger rise again, but beneath it, something steadier, resolve. She opened the motel drawer and pulled out the photograph of her husband. His smile, frozen in uniform, looked almost real under the dim lamp. "You fought for truth once," she whispered. "Now it's my turn." Morning came with a thin slice of sunlight through the blinds. Rebecca returned with coffee and a new phone. "It's not over," she said, setting it down. "They're planning a press conference. You'll need to speak." Maria blinked. "Me?" "You're the witness, Maria. The people trust your voice more than any politicians." The thought made her stomach twist, but she nodded. For years, she had been invisible. Maybe this was how that ended, not with fear, but with her standing in front of the world, telling the truth herself. She spent the rest of the day rehearsing in front of the mirror. Her English broke sometimes, words catching in her throat, but Rebecca helped her shape them, line by line. By dusk, the press gathered again, the same square where it had all begun. The storm clouds were gone now, leaving the air heavy with anticipation. Maria stepped onto the small platform, flashbulbs bursting like gunfire. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then she looked at Diego in the crowd, his small hand waving. She raised the microphone. The city fell silent. "My name is Maria Lopez," she began. "I sell tacos. I work hard. I don't lie. What I saw, I showed. Not because I hate anyone, but because I love this country that gave me a chance." Her voice trembled but grew stronger with each word. "They say I should be afraid. But I think the ones who should be afraid are the men who believe money can hide the truth." When she finished, the applause came like thunder, raw, human, unstoppable. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted her name. In a building a few blocks away, Senator Reed watched from behind tinted glass, his reflection fractured on the screen. For the first time in his career, he felt powerless. The woman he had dismissed as background noise had become the story that would define him. Maria stepped down from the stage, the noise fading behind her. She felt lighter, not safe, not free, but certain. The truth was out there now, alive and moving. And somewhere, deep within the machinery of the city, the cracks were beginning to show. She took Diego's hand. "Come on," she said softly. "We're going home." The night air smelled of rain and freedom. Tomorrow would bring the investigations, the hearings, the betrayals. Power would fight back with everything it had. But Maria was no longer running. She had become the voice they couldn't silence. The city never truly slept. Even at midnight, the streets of Washington pulsed with distant headlights, murmuring sirens, and the low hum of power moving through marble corridors. Maria stood by the window of the motel, her reflection hovering ghost-like against the city lights. Below her, a reporter's van idled, its antenna glinting faintly under the sodium glow. The air smelled faintly of wet concrete and exhaust. The press conference had ended hours ago, but its echo still vibrated through her bones, her own voice replaying again and again in her head, brittle and raw, carried by networks she had never dreamed would speak her name. In the dim room behind her, Diego slept curled up on the second bed, his breath steady and soft. She envied his calm, the innocent faith that tomorrow would simply arrive and bring light with it. But Maria knew better. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Truth was a blade. Once drawn, it couldn't be sheathed without blood. Her phone buzzed again, lighting up the nightstand. She hesitated, then picked it up. A text from an unknown number read, "They'll try to buy your silence. Don't take the deal. No name, no number, just that." She deleted it immediately, but her hands shook. Rebecca had warned her about this. The calls, the bribes, the threats. Reed's world was built on silence. Now that silence was cracking, and men like him would do anything to plaster over the noise. Maria went to the sink, splashed her face with cold water, and stared into the mirror. Her eyes were ringed with exhaustion, her lips cracked. She didn't look like a revolutionary. She looked like a woman who had carried too many things alone for too long. When morning came, the motel phone rang. It was Rebecca. "Turn on the TV," she said. Maria did. Reed was on every channel again, but this time his voice was trembling. Reporters swarmed around him like vultures. "Senator, do you confirm that your aide James Carter has fled the city? Is it true that federal agents are investigating your campaign finances?" Reed's smile was thin, mechanical. "I have no comment on ongoing investigations. My focus remains on serving the American people." But even through the screen, Maria saw it. That flicker of fear, that desperate clenching of his jaw. His empire was crumbling, one lie at a time. Rebecca arrived an hour later, her coat dusted with rain. She dropped a stack of newspapers on the table. Maria's face was on every cover. "The street vendor who shook the Capitol," one headline read. Another called her the woman who filmed justice. "I didn't ask for this," Maria murmured. Rebecca sat down across from her. "No one does. But you started something. People are angry, not at you, at the system. They see themselves in you." Maria looked toward Diego, who was drawing quietly on a napkin. "I just wanted to sell food," she said softly. "Feed my son. Now I'm supposed to be a symbol." "Symbols are dangerous," Rebecca said, pouring coffee into 2 chipped cups. "They can't be bribed or silenced easily. That's why they'll come harder for you now." Maria felt the weight of the words settle between them. "Then let them come." That evening, the knock on the door wasn't from a reporter or a police officer. It was from a man in a dark suit who introduced himself simply as Mr. Hale. He spoke softly, his voice smooth as oil. "Ms. Lopez," he said, stepping into the room with the ease of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I represent certain individuals interested in resolving this unfortunate situation peacefully." Maria crossed her arms. "Peacefully?" Hale smiled. "Yes, you've been through a lot. You deserve rest, protection. We can provide that. All we ask is that you refrain from further comment to the media. Take a little vacation, perhaps out of the country." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "You mean hush money?" Hale's smile didn't falter. "I mean an opportunity to rebuild your life, away from the chaos." Maria said nothing. The man's cologne smelled like iron and smoke. Behind his politeness, she sensed the threat, the subtle weight of or else. "Get out," she said finally. Hale sighed, adjusted his cufflinks, and nodded. "Think carefully. The world forgets quickly, Ms. Lopez, but powerful men don't." Then he left, closing the door with deliberate calm. Rebecca exhaled. That was their first offer. The next one won't be as polite. Maria sat down, pressing her palms to her knees. "I won't run." Rebecca studied her face. "Then you'd better be ready to fight." Outside, the evening darkened into the color of smoke. Somewhere across town, police sirens cut through the silence. Maria turned off the lights and watched the street through the curtain slit. A black sedan was parked across the road, the same kind that had followed them after the press conference. She didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floor, every hiss of passing tires kept her alert. By dawn, she made up her mind. She couldn't hide forever. If they wanted her silent, she would speak louder. Rebecca arranged an interview with one of the biggest news networks. The studio lights were blinding. Maria's hands trembled as she clipped the microphone to her blouse. The host smiled politely, but the sharpness in her eyes betrayed her hunger for drama. "Maria Lopez," she began, "you've become the face of truth for millions. But critics say you're being used by political forces. What do you say to that?" Maria looked straight into the camera. "I say I don't belong to anyone. I'm not a politician. I'm not an activist. I'm just someone who saw something wrong and refused to look away." The interviewer leaned forward. "And do you believe Senator Reid was aware of the bribe?" "I believe men like him always know," Maria said. "They build their power on the silence of others. I broke that silence." The studio fell still for a moment. Then the host smiled again, but it was thin, forced. "Thank you, Ms. Lopez. That was powerful." When the interview aired, the response was immediate. Protesters filled the streets. Some carried signs with her name. Others demanded Reid's resignation. Late-night hosts debated her courage. Commentators dissected her accent, her clothes, her motives. Maria stopped watching. Fame felt like another kind of cage. 2 days later, the black sedan returned. It followed her from the grocery store to the park, then back to the motel. She could feel the eyes behind the tinted windows. Rebecca called the police, but they said without a direct threat, there was little they could do. That night, as she tucked Diego into bed, he asked quietly, "Are we safe, Mama?" She wanted to lie, to say yes, but instead, she kissed his forehead and whispered, "We will be." The next morning, the sedan was gone, replaced by 2 unmarked police cars. The FBI had stepped in, officially opening a corruption case against Reid. Carter had been located in Baltimore, arrested while trying to board a flight under a fake name. The footage, the transactions, the offshore accounts, it was all unraveling. When Maria heard the news, she didn't smile. Justice wasn't victory. It was survival. Rebecca met her outside the courthouse where Reid's hearing would be held. Reporters swarmed the steps, microphones poised like spears. "You don't have to go in," Rebecca said quietly. Maria shook her head. "Yes, I do." She walked past the cameras, past the shouting questions, into the marble halls where men like Reed had written laws that had crushed people like her. Reed was already there, seated with his lawyers, his hair perfectly combed, his eyes dark hollows of fury. When he saw her, something flickered. Recognition, then hatred, then fear. The prosecutor's voice echoed in the chamber. Evidence flashed on screens, the envelope, the wire transfers, the phone logs. Carter, in handcuffs, refused to meet Reed's eyes. When it was her turn to speak, Maria stood, hands clasped, voice steady. She told the truth again, simply, clearly, without embellishment. The courtroom was silent, every word landing like a stone. When she finished, Reed's lawyer tried to discredit her. He called her a disgruntled vendor, an illegal alien, a woman seeking attention. But the jury's faces told the story. They weren't listening to him anymore. They were looking at her and believing. By sunset, Reed had resigned from office. Carter agreed to cooperate with the investigation. Maria left the courthouse through the back entrance, the air sharp and clean after rain. For the first time in months, she felt light. Rebecca caught up with her on the steps. "You did it," she said. Maria smiled faintly. "No, the truth did." They stood there for a long moment, watching the city flicker to life again. A city that had ignored her for so long, now whispering her name like a secret. As night fell, Maria walked home hand in hand with Diego. The lights along the Potomac shimmered, reflecting a city both broken and reborn. She knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, trials, hearings, interviews. But for tonight, there was peace. The truth had survived, and somewhere deep inside her, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was what freedom felt like. But power never dies quietly. Beneath the calm surface of the Capitol, new whispers were spreading about who had funded Reed, about the network that stretched far beyond him. Maria's name was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The Capitol looked different now. To most people, it was the same marble shell of history, white, stately, indifferent. But to Maria Lopez, it had begun to feel like a living thing, a creature built of secrets and whispers, still breathing beneath the rain-washed stone. The scandal that had toppled Senator Reed had barely cooled, yet the air around Washington pulsed with a strange, nervous energy, as if the city itself knew that something much larger was cracking open. Maria could sense it in the way people stared at her on the subway, in the sudden hush when her name was mentioned in coffee shops. She had become a symbol of courage, of defiance, of truth. And yet every headline that used her face felt like another layer of distance between her and her own life. She was no longer Maria the street vendor. She was Maria Lopez, the whistleblower. And symbols, she had learned, were both untouchable and disposable. It had been 3 weeks since Reed's resignation. The trial was over. His aide Carter was in custody, and yet Maria's phone still rang with unknown numbers. The threats had become more subtle now, no longer promises of violence, but carefully worded reminders that powerful men rarely fall alone. Some messages carried pictures of her old neighborhood, her son's school, even the small restaurant she'd once dreamed of opening. The warnings were clear. Someone wanted her quiet again. Rebecca stayed close. The journalist had become more than an ally. She was the only person Maria trusted in a city built on lies. Together, they had spent long nights sifting through documents Carter had surrendered to the authorities, bank transfers, donor lists, encrypted memos. What they found terrified even the seasoned reporter. The corruption didn't end with Reed. It reached into corporations, lobbyists, and government contracts that stretched across oceans. Reed had only been one node in a vast, glittering web. One night, Maria and Rebecca sat in the small apartment the FBI had relocated them to, the blinds drawn tight. The television played softly in the background. Another round of pundits arguing about reform, each trying to sound more outraged than the last. On the table lay a folder Rebecca had received anonymously that morning, marked with a single word: Continuum. Maria traced the letters with her fingertip. "What is it?" Rebecca hesitated. "A shell company. On paper, it funds infrastructure projects overseas, but the money loops back into political campaigns here. Reed's donations came from it. So did others. We're looking at something systemic." Maria felt her stomach tighten. "You mean it doesn't end?" Rebecca gave a tired smile. "It never does. But we can make people see it." Before Maria could answer, there was a soft knock at the door. They exchanged glances. The clock on the wall read past midnight. Rebecca slipped her hand toward the phone while Maria approached the peephole. It was an FBI agent, Wilson, the one who had handled her case. His expression was tight, his voice low when she opened the door. "We need you to come with us, now." "Why?" "There's been a breach. Someone leaked your location." Maria's pulse quickened. She turned to grab her jacket, but before she could move, a flash of light exploded through the window. The sound followed an instant later. Glass shattering, a dull, concussive boom that rattled the walls. Smoke filled the air. Rebecca pulled Maria to the ground as alarms wailed outside. Minutes blurred into chaos, sirens, shouting, the metallic taste of dust in the air. By the time they were led into an armored SUV, Maria could barely see. Her ears rang, her hands shaking. She turned to Wilson. "Was that meant for me?" He didn't answer. The look in his eyes was enough. They drove through the city in silence. The streets glowed with emergency lights. Somewhere behind them, the apartment building burned. Reporters would soon arrive. So would the speculation. But Maria knew the truth. The fire wasn't random. It was a message. The next morning, news channels called it an accident. "Faulty wiring," one anchor said with a reassuring smile. Maria turned off the TV before the lie finished. Rebecca slammed a newspaper down on the table of their new safe house. "They're covering it up. And not just that, look." The headline read, "Whistleblower's credibility in question. New evidence suggests foreign funding." Maria stared at the article. It quoted anonymous sources, implying that she had been paid by rival political groups to fabricate the video. "They're rewriting the story," Rebecca said. "Discrediting you. If people stop believing, the truth dies quietly." Maria closed her eyes. She could almost hear Reed's voice again, smooth and measured, promising integrity while drowning the city in rot. Nothing had changed. Only the names. "Then we don't let them," she said. The following days unfolded like a chase in slow motion. Every time Rebecca tried to publish the new evidence, her articles were blocked. Servers crashed. Editors grew nervous. "Too risky," they told her. "Too political." Anonymous threats landed in both their inboxes. The Continuum files were too big, too dangerous. It was Diego who broke the spiral. One evening, he handed Maria his tablet. "Mom, look." On the screen was a video, clips of Maria's speeches, her interview, her trembling but steady words at the courthouse. It had been uploaded by strangers, shared millions of times, captioned with a single phrase. "She stood alone, so we could stand together." Maria felt her throat tighten. "Who made this?" "I don't know," Diego said. "People." For the first time in weeks, she smiled. Truth, it seemed, had found its own voice. They decided to act. With Rebecca's contacts and Carter's encrypted data, they compiled a dossier, names, transactions, offshore accounts, all tracing back to Continuum. It was more than enough to implicate half a dozen officials and 2 billionaires. The plan was simple: leak everything publicly, bypassing traditional media. The night they uploaded the files, the sky was heavy with thunder. Maria watched the progress bar crawl across the laptop screen while Rebecca paced. When it reached 100%, there was silence. Then, somewhere in the distance, lightning split the horizon. Within an hour, the internet exploded. Hashtags, headlines, anonymous data dumps. The Continuum papers were everywhere. No one could stop them. By morning, resignations began. CEOs vanished into private jets. Investigations opened. The government tried to contain the narrative, but it was too late. The truth had gone viral. Yet Maria knew it wasn't over. Power didn't fall. It adapted. Already, pundits were twisting the story, calling her reckless, unpatriotic, dangerous. Conspiracy theories bloomed like mold. Some even claimed Continuum was fake, a fabrication by shadowy enemies. Rebecca was called before a Senate committee to testify about the leak. Maria wanted to stand beside her, but the FBI advised against it. "You've done enough," Wilson said. "Let the system handle it." But Maria had seen what the system did with truth. It swallowed it whole. She watched Rebecca's hearing from a safe house in Virginia. The committee room looked like a theater, the senators' actors pretending to seek justice while rehearsing their outrage. Rebecca held her ground, her voice sharp, refusing to reveal sources. And then, midway through her testimony, one senator leaned forward, a new face, smooth, polite, and smiling too widely. "Ms. Shaw," he said, "do you have any evidence that Ms. Lopez's actions weren't influenced by outside interests? There are serious questions about her background, her immigration status." The room murmured. Maria's stomach turned cold. Even now, even after everything, they were turning the blade back toward her. Rebecca's answer was calm but lethal. "The only influence Maria Lopez ever had was hunger and conscience, which is more than I can say for most of you." The moment went viral within hours. But behind the applause, danger stirred again. That evening, Rebecca called Maria, her voice tight. "They're coming after me next." "What do you mean?" "The people behind Continuum. They're not finished. They need a scapegoat. I can handle myself, but you need to leave D.C. tonight. Take Diego and go." Maria wanted to argue, but something in Rebecca's tone stopped her. It wasn't fear. It was resignation. By dawn, Maria and Diego were on a bus heading south. The city faded behind them, a blur of gray and gold. She held her son close, whispering that it was just another new start. But deep down, she knew this wasn't an ending. It was the pause between storms. Rebecca's last message reached her 2 days later. It was a single line. "If anything happens to me, tell them the truth doesn't burn." Maria never heard from her again. Somewhere on the road between Georgia and Texas, she stopped at a gas station and watched the news on a flickering screen above the counter. The anchor's voice was solemn. "Investigative journalist Rebecca Shaw found dead in an apparent car accident early this morning." Maria stood motionless. The cashier said something, but she didn't hear it. The hum of the highway filled her ears, steady and endless. She walked outside, the desert wind hot against her face. For a long time, she just stood there, staring at the horizon. Then she took out her phone, opened the camera, and began recording. Her voice was calm, almost steady. "My name is Maria Lopez. They killed her because she told the truth. But I won't stop. I won't run anymore." She uploaded the video and watched as it began to spread, a small spark against the vast dark. By the time she reached the next town, her name was trending again. And this time, it wasn't as a victim. It was as a warning. The storm that had begun in one alley of Washington was now rolling across the country. And Maria Lopez, the woman who had once only wanted to sell tacos, had become something far greater, a mirror the nation could no longer look away from. The wheels of justice were turning again, but not everyone wanted them to reach the light. In the shadows of power, men gathered to rebuild what had been lost, and one of them had a plan to make Maria disappear forever. The desert stretched for miles, endless, pale, and silent. The highway cut through it like a scar, and the bus that carried Maria Lopez moved along it with the slow rhythm of something uncertain of its own direction. The horizon shimmered under the heat, a mirage of blue that promised nothing. Inside the bus, Maria sat by the window with Diego asleep against her shoulder. His small hand rested on hers, as if to keep her anchored in the world that still tried to forget her name. She watched the sun climb higher, the light spilling across the sand like fire, and for the first time since Rebecca's death, she allowed herself to cry. She cried for the friend who had believed in her when the world wanted her silent. She cried for the city that had turned its face away from truth until it burned. She cried for herself, for the woman who had once only wanted to sell tacos and now carried a nation's conscience like a weight she could not set down. The tears came quietly, rolling down her face without sound until the desert blurred outside her window. When the bus stopped at a small roadside diner in New Mexico, Maria woke Diego gently. The air was dry and sharp, and the smell of oil and dust filled her lungs. They sat in a corner booth, and she ordered 2 plates of pancakes they could barely afford. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, poured them coffee and said softly, "You look tired, honey. Long road?" Maria nodded. "Very long." The woman smiled faintly. "Sometimes the long road is the only way home." Maria looked at her, wondering if she somehow knew who she was, but there was no recognition in the woman's gaze, only the quiet understanding of someone who had seen many kinds of travelers pass through. After breakfast, Maria stepped outside and checked her phone. The signal was weak, but notifications poured in, messages from strangers around the world. Some sent prayers, others sent anger, but buried among them was one that made her stop breathing. It was an email from an anonymous account. The subject line read, "Rebecca's last file." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a link and a single sentence. "For when they come for you next, don't hide." She downloaded the file to her phone and opened it. It was a video, shaky and dim, Rebecca's face half lit by the glow of a laptop. "If you're seeing this," Rebecca's voice said, "then I didn't make it. But listen carefully, Maria. Continuum isn't gone. Reed was just one name. They'll replace him and erase me. They'll try to bury you, too. But this file, it has everything. The full trail, names, dates, banks. Get it out there and don't let anyone tell you it's too dangerous. Promise me." Maria closed her eyes. The desert wind howled through the cracked door of the diner. She whispered to herself, "I promise." That night, they reached a small town near the Texas border. Maria rented a room above a gas station, the kind that smelled of dust and diesel. Diego slept almost instantly, exhausted from days on the road. Maria sat by the window, the glow of her phone reflecting in her eyes. She opened Rebecca's file again and read the documents one by one. Offshore accounts, corporate memos, encrypted signatures that linked Continuum to half the political machinery of the country. It was enough to set the world on fire again. She could have stayed quiet. She could have erased it all, started a new life under another name, opened that small restaurant she'd once dreamed of. But she couldn't. Not anymore. Silence was what they counted on. Silence was their weapon. Maria waited until dawn. Then, with trembling fingers, she uploaded the file to the same anonymous network that had spread her live stream months ago. The screen flickered once, then the progress bar crawled across, inch by inch, until the message appeared, "Upload complete." Outside, the sky began to change. The first light of morning washed the desert in shades of rose and gold. Maria felt something break loose in her chest. Not fear, not relief, but something softer, quieter. She didn't know if this would save her, or if it would destroy her completely. But she had done what she promised. By midday, the world had seen it. News anchors stumbled over their scripts, politicians vanished from sight, and the name Continuum became the headline that no one could control. The leak confirmed everything. that the corruption ran deep, that the same money-funding campaigns had built wars, prisons, and lies. Maria's face appeared again, but this time the tone was different. Not pity, not outrage, reverence. The government issued statements, investigations were reopened, arrests were made. Yet Maria knew the machine would never truly stop. For every truth uncovered, another would be buried. But for once, the people were awake. The threats returned briefly, sharp and cold, but they faded. There was no longer one target to destroy. The truth had multiplied too fast. It lived in millions of copies, on servers across the world, in the hands of strangers who refused to let it die. 2 months passed. The world moved on, but slower this time, as if unsure of its own footing. Maria found work in a small cafe in Santa Fe. The owner didn't ask questions, only smiled when she said she could cook. She bought new shoes for Diego, who had started school again, speaking English with the easy rhythm of a boy who still believed tomorrow could be better. Sometimes customers recognized her, the woman from the video, the one who stood up to power. They would whisper or ask for photos, but Maria always declined. She didn't need fame. She had peace now, fragile, but real. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the red hills, she closed the cafe alone. The radio played softly, an old song about freedom, about loss. She leaned against the counter and looked out through the window at the quiet street. A group of children were running home, their laughter echoing through the dust. She smiled, remembering Diego's laughter when he was small, before the city, before the noise. Her phone buzzed once more. A message from an unknown number. Just 3 words. You kept your promise. No name, no trace. But Maria knew. She closed her eyes and whispered into the fading light. Thank you, Rebecca. She stepped outside, locking the door behind her. The sky above Santa Fe was vast and endless, the first stars blooming like scattered embers. She walked down the road toward her small home, the warm air carrying the scent of sage and dust. In the distance, she could see Diego waiting on the porch, waving. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't running. As she reached the house, she paused, turning back for a moment to look at the dark horizon. Somewhere beyond it lay Washington, the city of marble and glass, still spinning in its eternal dance of power. But Maria no longer belonged to it. Her story had escaped those walls. It lived in every voice that dared to speak, in every woman who refused to be silent, in every small act of defiance that began with the words, I saw what you did. She went inside, turned off her phone, and sat beside Diego on the couch. They ate dinner together, rice, beans, and a small piece of grilled chicken. Simple, warm, enough. After he went to bed, Maria opened her notebook. The pages were filled with recipes, notes, and sketches of a restaurant she would one day open. She wrote one final sentence at the bottom of the page. Truth, like light, doesn't belong to anyone, but it finds everyone who dares to walk in it. She closed the book and placed it on the table. Outside, the wind whispered against the window, soft and endless. She lay back on the couch, staring at the ceiling until her eyes grew heavy. And as sleep claimed her, she dreamed not of the city or the courtroom or the flames, but of a quiet street, a food cart, and the laughter of strangers tasting something good for the first time. In her dream, she was selling tacos again. The smell of cilantro and lime filled the air. The people smiled. The world was ordinary and kind. When morning came, she woke with tears on her cheeks, but this time they were not born of sorrow. They were the kind that came from remembering something beautiful that had survived. The sunlight poured through the window, golden and alive, touching the corners of the room like forgiveness. Maria stood, poured herself a cup of coffee, and stepped outside. The town was waking up. Somewhere a radio played the news, another story, another headline. but not about her, not anymore. She smiled. The world had taken her story, twisted it, magnified it, then forgotten it, as it always did. But that didn't matter. The truth remained, burning quietly, like a candle that refused to go out. And as she watched the light spread across the hills, Maria Lopez, the woman who had once been invisible, whispered into the morning air, "Let them see." The story was over, but the echo of it remained, carried in whispers, in screens, in hearts. Somewhere a new voice was rising, another Maria in another city, holding a phone, seeing something wrong, daring to speak. And in that way, the light stayed.